Welcome back to another episode review and breakdown for Batwoman Season 3 as we continue the season with Episode 2, Loose Tooth, where we finally get the introduction to the Arrowverse's adaptation of classic Batman villain Killer Croc. And of course, it's not the actual Killer Croc, it's like a new version of Killer Croc, because that's kind of the big thing in Batwoman Season 3 with all these Batman villain trophies, is that we're getting new people taking on the mantles of classic Batman villains like we saw last week with Mad Hatter. We know in the coming weeks we're going to be seeing with Mr. Freeze and Professor Pig. Actually, I don't know 100% for sure if they're going to be new people taking on the mantle, but we know those villains are coming. But this week we have Killer Croc in Loose Tooth. Definitely a great episode, but we have a lot to talk about today. So guys, of course, quick spoiler warning if you've not yet seen this episode, but without further ado, let's get into breaking down Batwoman Season 3, Episode 2, Loose Tooth. So we start off the episode with two teenagers sneaking into what looks like a public pool that's actually closed. So they're not supposed to be in there, but they're being all rebellious like teenagers are. Seems like they're dating because they're very all up on each other. But very, very rebellious though, like going to the pool at night, but also kind of romantic at the same time. I honestly wouldn't mind doing that with my girlfriend, but we'll see where things go. But I mean, this is the part I would not want to do because they both get killed. So let's not do that part. But yeah, so they go there and they get attacked and killed by Killer Croc, or at least the new Killer Croc, because then, just like in last week's episode, how we got a little bit of backstory on the Arrowverse's version of the original Mad Hatter, this time we get a little bit of backstory from Luke with his files from his father, Lucius Fox, on the original Killer Croc. Waylon Jones originally was a wrestler, whereas in the comics, I believe he was like a circus performer, and then he transformed into a crocodile or Killer Croc man. So in this version, he was a former wrestler who had this weird skin condition that turned him into a killer crocodile. So he's kind of the suspected killer here in this situation again, except it's not kind of the case because he's actually dead, because apparently Batman was trying to save him and find a cure for him while the GCPD just straight up killed him, and all that was left was the one single tooth of Killer Croc, which now, along with all the other Batman villain trophies, is loose in Gotham City and has now infected a new host to become the new Killer Croc. But meanwhile, we follow up with the cliffhanger from last week's episode with Jada Jet, of course, Ryan's real mother. So she shows up at Wayne Tower because, of course, at the end of last episode, one of her agents or assistants told her that somebody there was investigating her. So she goes to do a little investigating of her own, and right before she actually shows up, Sophie drops the bomb on Ryan that, hey, that's your birth mom right there. So they have a little conversation, not anything huge going on here, just, business woman to woman. So that was pretty cool, but in the back of Ryan's mind, she knows that that's her mother, and it was pretty crazy. But another thing I want to talk about real quick before we get into the whole Killer Croc stuff here is with Luke, because the Batwing suit is saying that he's injured and something's wrong with him. So Mary does a little bit of a checkup on him because, she's the doctor and everything. So he takes his shirt off and she's like, oh, you're looking pretty fit. Reminds me of Crisis on Infinite Earths when he had a cameo and it was like an alternate Earth version of Luke and he had like the full six-pack abs and everything, and Kate was like super surprised, like, whoa, Luke, you are ripped. Apparently he still is in this version as well. So, good for Luke. And then things get interesting because, Mary's doing a little checkup on him, checking his heartbeat and everything. And all of a sudden she's like, whoa, your heartbeat's speeding up really fast. And then all of a sudden it was racing. And honestly, it's so funny that in this moment as this was happening, I had no idea what was going on. I'm so stupid that I thought like it was an actual like medical condition or like he actually was injured or something. But then when it panned out to that shot of those two being super close, just looking into each other's eyes, you could tell he likey. So that's definitely a romance that's being set up here in this season, which honestly I'm a fan of. You could see the tension here in this scene that there's some sparks flying there, and I really like seeing that. There's been a little bit of groundwork laid for this relationship in previous seasons, so I'm excited to see where this goes. But anyway, let's get back to the whole Killer Croc storyline. So, of course, Batwoman is now teaming up with Alice after the end of last week's episode, where Renee Montoya has now basically released Alice to be under the responsibility of Ryan. So she's taking care of Alice, and they go to investigate another attack from Killer Croc, which then actually leads them into the sewer, where they find a man saying that this Killer Croc is his son. So he gives us a little backstory. His son's name is Steven, and when they went on a fishing trip, he found the Killer Croc tooth, and then he wanted to put it into a necklace or something, but it ended up cutting him, and then he got infected, and then he transformed into Killer Croc. And so he's down here in the sewers trying to lure out his son so that he can try to help him and try to save him. And you think he's going to help Batwoman and Alice, but then all of a sudden he pulls out this this taser stick thing and then gets both of them, and he completely turns on them, and he's like, I'm not going to let you hurt my son, but he's probably going to regret that, because you see what happens later when his son murders him. So yeah, Killer Croc shows up, takes him away. He ends up getting dead, but then Alice actually uses his taser to fry her ankle bracelet so that she's able to escape. But before she does, she's able to save the soccer girl that was kidnapped, so she's off on her way until Batwing shows up and then finds her and ejects her with these, I think he said they were like nanite trackers. So even if she does escape Arkham again, or if they keep working together in the future, they're not going to need that ankle monitor. They'll be able to track her either way. And of course, finally, Batwoman is able to take down Killer Croc. He's taken to Arkham Asylum. Alice is also sent back to Arkham, but again, most likely she's going to continue working with Batwoman and the whole Bat team and everything. But then we get a couple interesting cliffhangers here for this episode, because first of all, Renee Montoya is checking out the poison ivy sample that Ryan and Luke brought in at the beginning of the first episode, and she finds out that this is fake. This poison ivy is not the real poison ivy. She says, I've seen it in person, I know what it looks like, and this is not it. And of course, we already know poison ivy is supposedly going to be the main villain of this season, so it makes sense, that would have been too easy if they defeated her already off screen. So she's going to be the main villain, and obviously this means that something is being set up here going forward, so I'm definitely excited to see where that goes. But then also, the big ending scene here is where Ryan walks into Jaterian Industries, right straight into Jada's office, and she says straight up, "I'm your daughter." And then that is where the episode ends. And then, of course, we see the promo for next week's episode talking about, basically showing what's going to happen now that they know they're a family. We get the introduction to her brother Marquise, I'm not completely sure of the pronunciation. I mean, I know two different people in real life that pronounce it different ways. So I don't know which way they're going to pronounce it. We'll see in next week's episode. But for now, that is where the episode ends. Batwoman Season 3, Episode 2, Loose Tooth. Again, it's not the classic Killer Croc, but it was still cool seeing an adaptation here for the Arrowverse, even though he was in the shadows for the most of the time. I did a video on this breaking down our first look at the character. Honestly, I think he looks even better than Killer Croc did in the Suicide Squad movie. So I'm a fan of his design, just wish we got to see more of him. But for now, great episode. Excited to see where things go next week again, because I believe we're getting some Mr. Freeze. Don't know that for a fact, but just based off the episode title, I think it's called Freeze. So that's what I'm kind of assuming, but we'll have to wait and see. But for now, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about Batwoman Season 3, Episode 2? And thanks for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the DC life.